first off, thank you so much for meeting with me. It's totally a pleasure. You don't really get the opportunity to kind of dive into someone that works at Spotify. So thank you again for taking the time out of your day.
Of
Um,
course.
so yeah, so we can kind of just start off with, what are the three underrated version or features of Spotify for artists that you don't think people are taking advantage of right now?
Great question. Uh, yeah, for your viewers who haven't used Spotify for Artists before, it is a fan development platform. Over 1 million artists, labels, and managers use it every month to um, access streaming data and insights, to grow their audience with promotional tools, build their business with merch and tickets, and kind of build out their creative world. So video, visuals, artist profile, all those ways you express yourself to your listeners. Um, there's a lot of features packed in there. Three underrated ones I'd call out. One is our segments data, which is pretty new. It is on web only, so not yet in our mobile app. So sometimes artists haven't discovered it yet. We have lots of the data you'd expect in Spotify for Artists, where you can see your streams, your listeners, song by song, what playlists you're getting on, the source of streams, where you can see if your streams are coming from library or search or a certain playlist or programming, radio. Segments kind of takes those insights to the next level, where you get to see listener level data of where those streams coming from and how are you building your fan base. So you can see how many of your listeners are in your active audience. So at the top of the Spotify profile, you'll see how many monthly listeners you have. That might be people who only listen to you once on a playlist, or it might be your biggest fans who are listening to you over and over. Either way, it's one monthly listener. But when you go into segments, you can see, are you building those big fans? So active audience means they're seeking you out. They're listening to you from their own playlists, from your catalog, your albums, ways where they're choosing to listen to you. We break that down so you can see your light active listeners, moderate, and super listeners. And super listeners is a really fun and often underrated one, where you can kind of watch how your music's creating more and more super listeners who are listening to you actively a ton. We also show you data about how your fan base is changing. So previously active listeners, folks who used to listen to you intentionally, and then haven't come back to your music in the last month, you might want to do some marketing strategies to re-engage them. Your programmed listeners who just listen to you on programming like playlists or radio, and you have a chance now that they know you to switch them to lean in fans. So that's a really underutilized one, where you can go to the next level and see how your fan base is changing.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be the first. Second underrated feature I'd call out is Spotify clips.
Mm.
A lot of artists know about Canvas, which has been around for a few years. Those are the 3 to 8 second looping visuals you'll see on the back of a track. Over the past year or so, we've been expanding access to clips, which are short, under 30-second videos you can add to your profile and tag with your songs and albums. So it's a really great way. Sometimes streaming services can feel disconnected from your identity, your expression, kind of who you are as an artist, because it's just your music there. So clips are a really great way to humanize yourself and kind of show listeners who you are. They show up anywhere you can listen to the song. So I've seen really great clips where you're giving behind the scenes of how you made the song, what's the inspiration, maybe a little snippet of performing it live, or singing it acoustic or a cappella. It's a really interesting way to kind of take that listener who listens to you for the first time and then show them who you are. And third underrated feature I'd call out would maybe be kind of a fun deep cut. If you go to the playlist tab in Spotify for Artists, you can see every public user playlist that you've added to.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you'll see funny, green screen social videos where artists will talk through some of the funny playlists they're added to. But it actually can be really informative too, because you start to see, for fans who are adding you to playlists, what moods, what moments, what playlists are you on? Are there certain songs that get playlisted more? Is there a certain holiday or seasonal hook where you're getting to a lot of playlists about that. And I've heard some really smart marketing strategies come out of diving into that one, and it's a lot of fun too.
Cool. Yeah, no, I have a couple friends that do a lot of like artist like marketing stuff on TikTok, and a lot of them are like, hey, checking out playlists that my song is on. It's always cool because you can kind of see like, oh, like these are my like fans, you know, these are the type of people that are adding it. So it gives you a better, I guess, insight of like who is actually adding it to their playlist, which is really cool.
Yeah, and you can see how many streams come from each one, and sometimes some of these user playlists will be really popular, and that's kind of interesting to find out. Yeah, yeah, it's funny too. So often that's why people take a look.
Exactly. Yeah. Would love to talk about, I think, the second underrated feature you had mentioned. For those clips, I kind of got introduced to it. I think like 2 or 3 months ago when they announced it first, where it's like, hey, you can add kind of these like TikTok-y videos to your profile. How did those incorporate it with the app? So like if I'm streaming an artist, for example, if I'm streaming like John Legend, right, and he has a clip, is it treated as like kind of like a pre-roll ad that's playing before the song happens, or is it just like if I go to his profile, it's somewhere on his section I can click on it?
Yeah, it's basically kind of connected as bonus content anywhere you can play the song or that you're learning about the artist. So we don't want to force it in listeners' faces. We want to present it so when they are falling in love with a song or an artist, kind of you click right there and can watch the clip. So there's a clips tab on artist profile. So if you're looking at artist profile, you hit the clips tab at the top and you see all their videos. And then if you're listening to any song that has a clip tag to it, it'll show up at the bottom of the release page or on the now playing view, which is what we call the screen that shows up when a listener is playing your song, that kind of full screen view. It's kind of bonus content where they're loving the song, they see there's a clip, they watch and learn more. We're also testing out some ways where we'll use clips to introduce listeners to kind of new music. And so if you kind of are on the music homepage, if you kind of hit music at the top of your home screen as a listener, there's a carousel now of recommended clips based on artists you like. So it can also be a really good way to get new listeners to your music by kind of your clip hyping it up and making it kind of fun and interesting or intriguing someone to want to listen to it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know like a lot of marketing people tell me like, hey, you know, any artist that's trying to really grow on the platform, they should treat Spotify as more of like a social network rather than just being like, hey, post music and just be on with it. Because you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the algorithm really pushes people that are posting consistently like, hey, like, are you planning a release every month? If they're engaging with the platform, like, are you making playlists? Are you, putting announcements on your page? Are you adding canvases? Are you doing all this stuff you possibly can to build up your profile? That's a huge factor. That's what I've been told, in, getting the algorithm, I guess, to help work on your side. So.
Yeah, there's never any kind of like magic answer to how often to be releasing. It's like every artist is different. Ultimately, the best signal for the Spotify algorithm is music that listeners are really connecting with. If they're saving it, streaming it, playlisting it, and so like if an artist is rushing out releases and they aren't connecting as well, that's not going to help you. You should just kind of do what's right for you and your audience. But for all those features around it, where trying to make tools in Spotify for artists that help you engage your audience, whether you're kind of on cycle or in between releases. And so, clips are a great example. People definitely kind of compare them to TikToks and social videos sometimes, but we think of them pretty differently because, when you're thinking about social feeds, you're really trying to attract attention in like the 72 hours after you post it, and then you're coming up with a new one. And when you're on those feeds, you're trying to get attention from all the video in the world, right? You're trying to compete with cooking content and comedy and digital creators and fashion and everything else. With clips, it's really about less kind of fighting for that attention and more just about the music. So you can upload a clip and it's going to be tagged to your track forever. So if someone discovers your album a year from now, they're going to see it just the same as in a day or two. It's almost like bonus content. Like, you used to think about liner notes for a CD. It's attached kind of more kind of canonically to your music. And so, and when a listener's there, they want to hear about you. They want to hear about your music. So you don't have to do, a really catchy first 3 seconds to make sure that people don't swipe through. and you're in an environment where listeners are there to hear about the music and understand you as an artist. So the form factor is similar because they're vertical videos, but the artists who are using clips best are kind of thinking of them as evergreen, as kind of this bonus content that can help get a listener from liking your song to loving you as an artist.
Gotcha. So it's kind of like, I think you mentioned in number 2, like the segments of artists, like it's pushing those passive fans to be like, hey, like I really like this one artist. I want to connect with them more. The clips are kind of for that, like bridging them to that next point where hopefully they'll buy merch, buy tickets, pushing them to that kind of super fan stage.
Yeah, exactly. And it happens to me all the time now, where like I'll be listening to a song, my phone's in my pocket. We all have that moment where you like the song, so you open your phone to, playlist it, or add it to your liked songs, and then I'll see a clip there, and it'll be, the artist explaining what it means, or a video of them performing, and they look really fun, or I understand the lyrics in a new way. And suddenly I'm checking out the artist, thinking about the artist, remembering who they are. And yeah, it's you look at segments data, and that's the sort of momentum we're seeing where when your listeners are watching your clips, they're going from programmed to active, they're going from light listeners to moderate listeners to super listeners, and kind of helping artists move their fan base in that direction.
Cool. Awesome. Well, hopefully not all the questions will be that in depth. They'll be pretty, hopefully easier answers for you. But that was great. That was good. That's good to know. Clips is definitely something that like I haven't dove into too much yet. But it sounds like a really good tool for artists where it's like, hey, now you can actually be giving some more behind the scenes. You're not really going to be fighting for people's attention because you're already going to have the fan engaged, right? It's just that other bit of like content or, activation that's going to help them, make the gap. So
exactly.
Cool. All right. So picture I'm a new artist. I just put out my first song on Spotify. What are the first things I need to do with the platform? Whether it's pitching my next single to Spotify for artist editorials, setting up a canvas, what are the first steps I should take?
Great question. So yeah, if your first single is coming up, you've claimed your Spotify for Artists dashboard, first thing you should do is set up your artist profile. You can think of your profile as your homepage on Spotify. When listeners want to get to know you, that's the first place they're going to turn. So you should add a great header image. You can add an image gallery so people can kind of see your vibe, fill in your bio, add your social links, make sure you add any merch you have so it shows up in the merch tab, add some video clips so it's in your clips tab. If you have any concerts coming up, that'll show up in your events tab. And then you can curate artist playlists even. So you can make your own playlists of your inspirations or music from other projects you've made, whatever that may be, and feature them right there on your profile. So that's step one. Step two is just prepare that first single to have its best chance of succeeding on Spotify. So that means pitching our playlist editors through Spotify for Artists in our playlist pitching tool at least 7 days before it comes out. So they have a chance to listen to it and see if it makes sense in any of our programming placements. And then upload a canvas, which is kind of like album art for the streaming age. Instead of being a static image, it's fills the whole screen, can be 3 to 8 seconds, and it loops and kind of can help kind of show a bit of the expression behind your song and a bit of the kind of mood and vibe of it. Then when your song comes out, the last feature you're going to want to use is called Artist Pick. And that pins your new song right at the top of your artist profile. You can add a little artist comment that annotates that it's your new release or something about it. That helps signal to listeners like, this is my new thing, go check it out.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I think with a lot of independent artists, like they'll spend 5 minutes on the platform. They're not updating their artist bio, and you'll click on their profile. It's like, oh, I like this song, but there's no way to find other information about them. There's no like what's coming up next. So I think all that is super helpful. Like, hey, you want to be setting up like the best case scenario where someone clicks on your profile, knows exactly who you are, knows the new music coming out, and can kind of dive more into your profile.
Right.
All this I think is really necessary to just make it easier for your listener to learn more about you as an artist, which I think is really important. So.
Yeah, right. Spotify is so good at getting your music out there so you can kind of find those listeners. And then it's about using these tools to have listeners kind of have that fan conversion moment. They love the song, and then make sure you have everything set up so that they get to see, who you are, what's your vibe, get your bio, click your social links, and follow you on social. If you have merch, they may go buy the vinyl. If you have a concert coming up near you, we'll show them that, and they can go buy a ticket. So you just want to make sure you're kind of set up for that moment when a listener kind of leans into your music.
Exactly. 100%. Cool. All right. Explain, this one's kind of funny. Explain editorial playlist pitching as if I was like 10 years old. So just graduated, what is that, 4th grade, 5th grade. I want to put out a song. How do I get it on New Music Friday? How do I get it on, Rap Caviar? What are the tips you recommend on what to include in the pitch?
Yeah. Playlist pitching is a really powerful tool in Spotify for Artists. It's completely free to use. And the biggest artists in the world and a small artist doing their first single, they're using the exact same tool, pitching in the exact same way. And it's the way new music gets in front of our amazing group of Spotify editors. All right, like how would I explain it to a 10-year-old? If you had a new song coming out and you're on an elevator with someone for 60 seconds only, what would you want to tell them about your new song? How would you explain it to them? That's really the mentality of the pitching tool. Our editors are listening to music literally all day. That's their job. And so the pitching tool gives them all that context before they're going to listen. Mm-hmm. So, imagine you were trying to play a new song for a friend, and right before you hit play, you're going to set it up, right? You want the mood to be right. You want them to have the right listening context. You want them to understand what they're about to hear. Same idea in the pitching tool. You're going to put in the genres that you kind of classify your song in. You're going to put demographic information, where you live. You're going to add a bunch of metadata so that, we know all the credits of your song and who's involved. And then the most important part is the kind of pitch itself, where you want to keep it kind of short and snappy, but tell our editors in a few sentences, what's the song about, what's your promotional plan, what inspired you to release it, how does it fit into your artist project, and kind of the story of you, and kind of how you're trying to build your fan base. And editors are going to read that in our back end right before they listen. And then, based on that, they try to find the best home for the song in any of our playlists. We have the big flagship playlists you mentioned, New Music Friday, Today's Top Hits, Hot Country. But then there's, thousands of playlists kind of across the ecosystem. One of my favorite set of playlists are called Fresh Finds. There's, 20 of them or so. And that's a playlist ecosystem focused just on independent music. And we have Fresh Finds playlists by country, by genre. Thousands of artists get added to them every month, often for the first time they've been on a playlist. And then people who love discovering new music and kind of want to dive into that community goes to the Fresh Finds playlist. And there's really, I find, amazing stuff there all the time. So yeah, when you hear about playlisting on Spotify, people tend to think of just those, big global playlist brands, but there's, an entire ecosystem and, every holiday, every season, every mood, every activity, we kind of curate great playlists for all those. So lots of opportunity to get featured.
Gotcha. So I guess it's kind of based on that. It's really, really important to make sure your pitch is as concise while kind of encapsulating the song as much as you can, whether it's your location, whether it's the genre, whether it's oh, I'm really making this music for one specific subgenre that most people might not know of, but hopefully we'll have some sort of playlist involved with it. So it sounds like the more detailed you can be with your pitch, the better. Regardless of the stats and other information, they really want it to be hey, can we find a home with this, just based on kind of the short, I think it's 500 character pitch you're sending, is really what they want. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Cool. Sweet. That's good to know. Hopefully that'll help some artists out there that are what do I write for that section, So
I know it can feel pretty existential. I think when the pitch just get down to the details, share, from the heart about the inspiration of the song, be really clear about the story around it and how you're promoting it, and don't overthink it. It's probably the best approach.
Exactly. Cool. All right. This might be kind of I don't really know if there's going to be a complete answer for this one, but say you're an artist, it's like, hey, been with the platform for a year, don't see my streams going up, don't see my monthly listeners going up. What are some ways I can boost that, whether that's through independent pitching, through playlists, just putting out more music? What are some things I can look at in my system of like, hey, I want to grow as an artist, but I don't see it really growing and reflecting on the platform.
Yep.
What are some ways I can utilize either Spotify for artists or just the platform as a whole to grow my following?
Yeah, lots of it's there's so much of a kind of case by case basis on these sorts of things, but we try to provide a lot of tools to help artists kind of figure out what's working and then to do more of it. So usually my advice would be, start with the data on Spotify for artists, where you can start to see of the music you have released, which ones has the most streams per listener, meaning people tend to listen more than one time, which are getting saved and playlisted the most. Which ones are resonating with a certain location. You can see kind of which countries and which cities you're getting the most streams from. Try to look for, trends in your data about what's connecting with your audience and what isn't. And often you'll kind of get insights. Okay, these 3 songs performed the best. Is there something about the sound of them, like the genre or the production of it? Is there something even in like the title of the song that you did differently? Is there something different you did in your promotional planning? Like, maybe for some of them you realize, oh, I pre-teased those on my social channels before it came out. Or maybe they all were surprise releases, or maybe they were part of a bigger artist project, or maybe they were collaborations, right? Like you're looking for some of those data signals to kind of help inform what's working. And then, of course, you always want to stay true to your artistic vision. So, hopefully you can find the marriage of those two things. Anytime you're releasing music, really important to, try to get it out to your audience everywhere you can. Social can be really good at that. On Spotify, we offer a lot of integrations with social platforms. So when you share to Instagram or TikTok or Snapchat, we make it look really nice, and people who see it on your social could click right into the music. That's always important. And then we have a suite of tools in Spotify for artists called Campaign Kit. And those are all of our promotional features that can help you grow your audience. The first feature in Campaign Kit, we've already talked about, playlist pitching, 100% free. Make sure to pitch, ideally at least 7 days before the song comes out. Then we offer a tool called Marquee that is a full screen sponsored recommendation to listeners based on the targeting you choose. So you choose your budget, you choose, what type of listeners you want to reach. Maybe you're trying to reach those previously active listeners who used to listen to you actively but haven't checked out your music in a bit. And then you choose your budget size of how many folks you want to reach. Marquee can be particularly good for, that new release moment and new release momentum. We offer Showcase, which is a sponsored recommendation that's kind of a home banner on home, and you get to choose the headline. So there's 8 or 9 headlines you can choose, like seasonal vibes or on the rise or gaining buzz. And then again, choose your targeting. And the last tool in Campaign Kit is called Discovery Mode. That one is all about increasing your reach in radio, Spotify mixes, autoplay, those really kind of powerful discovery channels on Spotify where your music can reach brand new people who maybe have never heard of you, but they've started a radio station or a mix based on a genre. And Discovery Mode increases the chances that your song gets played in those environments. So Campaign Kit can be a great kind of toolkit with a range of options, kind of music-specific promotional tools. We try to make them as simple and intuitive as we can, because a lot of tools, promotional tools in music can be pretty complex, and a great place to start.
Gotcha. So it sounds kind of like, hey, maybe it's worth, as an artist, in that situation, take a step back, be like, all right, you've already made some progress in this year, kind of identify like what has been doing well, what didn't do well, just kind of like, I guess, giving you more of like a, bird's eye view of like your situation just sounds like a better approach. It sounds like you're really pushing for listener retention is more important than just like, oh, like I got a big playlist, got a bunch of streams, but now no one has that song saved, and it's like now that's tanking right now, right? So it does sound like a lot of it is like it's better to have 1,000 fans that are motivated and wanting to listen to you rather than a big playlist, a lot of fans that are kind of like, oh, this song's okay, but they're not going to save it, they're not going to watch you live. So it sounds like listener retention, gaining those like true active followers is really important for growth.
Yeah, you nailed it. Yeah, we're trying to build tools that help artists build sustainable careers. And I say sustainable because playlisting, programming, those are great. But if the listener is just there to listen to the playlist, they're not going to be the folks who are coming back to your next album, going to your shows, helping to power your career. So all the tools we build are about that retention and conversion moment of helping artists take a new listener and turn it into a long-term fan that is going to come back to their music for months, for years. And that's really the goal. That's building that kind of sustainable career that we're hoping for.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. So this one, I think there's more playlists I can add to this, but how do I get my song on Release Radar and Discover Weekly? I know for those playlists in particular, at least with Release Radar, I think they've definitely expanded on which songs are included. It used to be, if you're following this artist, all their catalog is going to get added whenever it comes out. Now I feel like it's kind of mixing between the two, where you're getting recommendations as well as artists you're following. Discover Weekly, I think, is still pretty kind of like mystic in the way they pick songs and how it's getting added, but would love your opinion on what are the best ways to get added to those playlists.
Yeah, with Discover Weekly, that one's kind of purely algorithmic, and so making sure that you've delivered the music to Spotify early and put in all the right metadata and helping to make sure we have all the signals the algorithm needs to find your right listeners. Discover Weekly can be huge, but yeah, definitely kind of personal to each listener algorithmically. Not so much an artist can do beyond just kind of delivering their music to Spotify. Release Radar is an algorithmic playlist that is just about brand new music that was just released. It's also algorithmic, so it's personalized to each listener based on all the new music that just reached Spotify that Friday. We'll rank for them. Here's the new songs we think you should check out. This one's connected to our playlist pitching tool in Spotify for Artists. So if you have a single, it's pretty easy. You just want to pitch the single at least 7 days before it comes out, and then it'll be eligible for Release Radar. And that can be a really good kind of new release promotion vehicle. If you have an EP or an album, through the pitching tool, we allow you to choose your focus single. So that's telling us this is the song that's a priority for me when the kind of full body of work comes out. And that also is a signal to Release Radar. So then that means that's the song we're going to put on the Release Radar for your fans and potential listeners. What's cool about Release Radar is every new song you release will be on the Release Radar of your followers. So on Spotify, like on social platforms, at the top of every artist profile, they can hit follow, which is a signal to us that they want to be connected to you as an artist. That means we're going to recommend your music all over Spotify. There's a What's New feed, there's Release Radar, there's all different surfaces where once, fans first emails, if you've ever gotten those, if a listener follows you, that's the best way for them to signal they want to hear more from this artist. And so for artists who really want to leverage Release Radar, always good to remind fans to follow you on Spotify. Make that kind of a call to action when you're promoting your Spotify work on socials, because every new follower you get means that many more Release Radar placements every time you release new music.
Gotcha. So in that situation, it might make sense for like an artist that's like, hey, I want to put out an album, right? They might not have the big following, so it may make more sense for them to, instead of doing an album, do 12 singles and schedule them over the course of a couple of weeks. Just because I know, getting your stuff at least 7 days in advance just to have it as editorial posting opportunities for them. And I think just giving more runway for the songs might make more sense by putting them out slowly rather than all at once, it sounds like, just based on the Discover Weekly and Release Radar.
Yeah, a lot of artists are using that waterfall strategy. So it's instead of releasing the full album or EP at once, just what you're saying, you kind of waterfall a few singles that build momentum for your release. That can work a lot. There's a lot of artists where their kind of full body of works, meant to be experienced at once, and we have lots of great features for promoting albums too. So I never like to suggest there's any kind of prescriptive rules of how you have to release new music. Lots of artists succeed, just releasing a full album at once. Some will do 1, 2, 3, 4 waterfall singles. Some will waterfall the entire album and then kind of let fans know once it's complete. And so advantages to each of those strategies.
Gotcha. I know this has definitely probably changed in the past, but to my knowledge, people are like, hey, you want to upload your songs at least 1 to 2 months in advance, just to give the curators time. Hearing 7 days is like, okay, does that give them really enough time to dive into your music? I assume that songs that get uploaded, quote unquote late, for example, if you uploaded it today and you wanted it, hey, it's coming out next Thursday. Is it getting bumped up in the line for when the curator is going to check it out? Or is it like, hey, if we have time, we'll go through those ones that are a little bit short notice compared to another track that might have had a month runway of getting it scheduled and everything?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the earlier, the better. That'll never hurt. I would never delay a release if there's a specific release date you have in mind for some reason. I might delay it if it means it's going to be less than a week between when you deliver it to Spotify when it comes out, but it's not saying you need to be delaying a month if there's a reason you want to release it to give editors that time. For a lot of artists, they want to build that kind of longer promotional plan for a release anyway, and so they'll deliver the music and pitch it a month, 2 months in advance. Our editors love that because the more time they have to review it, you can only imagine how much music's getting pitched each and every day, and so that always helps. But yeah, I wouldn't want an artist to think, oh, I need to have a month, I need to have 2 months between, if there's a reason they want to release it sooner. So the more time, the better. I know all my editor friends here would be happy if I shouted out, the longer lead time, the better. Yeah. But that definitely shouldn't be a hard and fast rule. At least a week is the guidance we give.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Okay, so this one might be a bit heavy question. There's a huge, kind of mystic thing about pre-saves. I know Spotify now offers pre-saves in the app. You can pre-save a song from an artist you really like. But there are a bunch of other third-party platforms like Tone Den, Hyped It, that all do hey, pre-save this song, it'll get added to their profile. Do you consider that to be something that independent artists should pay attention to? I know a lot of label artists are like, hey, my manager wants 2,000 pre-saves because that'll hopefully push the release when it does come out. Is that still important for independents, or should they be spending their time more on hey, make some more TikToks, make some more content? Pre-saves are just kind of one day of the week where people are going to actually have the song saved. Is it better to spend their time elsewhere?
Yeah, I say the third-party pre-save tools, based on the data we see, aren't that effective. Because they're kind of third party through the Spotify API. They're kind of a great way for fans to show, hey, I want to check out this album, but they're not connected to the streaming service, so it doesn't lead to the music getting recommended to them in any active way. Often it'll just kind of in the background save it to a user playlist or some kind of wonky solution. We have heard from independent artists how important that pre-release hype window is. And so much of the marketing effort now is in the lead up to a release. And so that's why we built Spotify countdown pages, which is our free kind of native solution for getting pre-saves. And the benefit to countdown pages is that it lives right within Spotify. There's no API login for your listeners. And because it's connected to Spotify, we can kind of really make sure that listeners see it and have the chance to listen to it right when it comes out. So in our data so far with countdown pages, 70% of listeners who pre-save the album listen to it in the first week, which is awesome. And we have some access to data for third-party tools, and I'll tell you, it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of that, which makes sense. The other kind of way we've tried to build countdown pages is that it isn't just kind of you hit a pre-save and that's the end of the story. We want you to be able to tell the whole story about what the album's going to be, get fans hyped up. So you can add video clips, which you might tease a song. It might be you to the camera telling people about what the album's going to be like. It might be where you like announce a collaborator or someone you're going to feature. You get to put all your track listing, so people can get excited for certain songs. They can play singles you've already released before the album comes out. You can list all your merch. You can put credits. And so the artists who are using countdown pages best are kind of updating it over time as that countdown clock on the countdown page clicks down. So, we were talking about the waterfall release strategy. You can see the track listing and they're all grayed out, and one by one they'll start coming out. You can upload new clips every few days and fans come back and they're going to start to see the story of your album come together. You can put pre-orders for merch or, full orders if your merch is already available. And then after you've built all that hype, you have all these pre-savers. When the music comes out, Spotify takes on the work of giving them a push notification, putting it on their home screen, sending them an email, making sure that they're going to go listen. And that's why you see that stat, that 70% of your pre-savers listen to the album week one. So yeah, for albums or EPs, you should definitely have a countdown page. We don't offer countdown pages for singles yet. We're really trying to focus on those bigger bodies of work where we know there's even more storytelling to take place.
Gotcha. That makes sense though, because then it gives artists like, hey, like maybe I should do an EP. There's more activations I can do with it. It reminds me of kind of like an advent calendar where it's like, hey, every day of the week you can open something new. It gives that extra bit of I guess fan engagement where it's like, oh, like check back, hey, there's something new, like did you guys check this? You can do like, not sure if this would be allowed, but hey, like we have like a promo code, you could save 10% on merch or whatever if you have like a clip that does that. Sounds really cool. Yeah.
Like I see all the time fans screenshot the countdown page because there's a big ticking countdown clock at the top. And so that's become kind of one of like the de facto ways for stands online to get each other hyped up. Like when it hits a 10-day countdown or a 7-day countdown or 1-day countdown or the last hour before the release, they screenshot it and kind of post it to their social. So there's kind of a nice little viral marketing baked into it.
Gotcha, for sure. That definitely makes sense though with the third-party platforms. I know with them, like you pre-save a song with like Toned In, for example, it gets added to your maybe I think like songs or user library, and that's it. You don't really get that push notification. It's almost like an empty stat that doesn't really mean a ton because you're not really getting fans from that. It's like a number that's going up. Hopefully some of them convert, when the song actually comes out. But that makes more sense. Like the features that are more integrated with Spotify tend to lead to better results because there's infrastructure built around it, right? There's more reason for people to find it, which makes a lot of sense. So
yeah, that's exactly right.
Cool. All right. Couple more questions here. Let me see. Okay, this one I don't really know if there's a complete answer, but what's like an urban myth about Spotify for artists? I know like back in the day, people were playing like Pokemon, like, oh, if you click on this button or you do this thing, you get this special encounter. What are some things I think you've seen online about Spotify for artists where it's like, oh, like they're only helping record label artists when they do editorial pitching? Would love, I guess, kind of some wacky things you've heard over the years.
Lots of urban legends. That's definitely one around playlist pitching. People always think there's like a different process for bigger artists, and there's two different playlist pitching forums or processes, or that editors review it in different ways. That's definitely a myth. Kind of one playlist pitching tool everybody uses. What's another myth I've seen online? I always see a lot of conspiracy theories about the real-time live listener count. When you open Spotify for Artists on the app or on web, like the biggest thing you see is we'll show you a live count of how many people are listening to your music at that moment, which is such an emotional thing. Like, especially for an artist just starting out, you see there's like 7 people around the world listening to my songs right now. Is really cool. I see a lot of theories where people think that's like a made up number or a growth hack. They're like, could this be real? Who are the 3 people listening? Early on in my time at Spotify, I like checked in with the engineering team. I was like, this is real, right? It's definitely real data. And seeing that live number grow can be really, really cool. What are other myths? I don't know. Yeah, you tell me what you've heard.
I think mainly like the record label where it's like, hey, record labels have, I think with that, it's like a counter to that answer is like, well, I think record label artists have a team and they have like a structured release plan. So I think because of that, it makes it easier for them to schedule their releases ahead of time, and that will hopefully give curators more time to find a home for those songs.
Yeah,
I
and
think
we build like, yeah, Spotify for Artists is built around like an artist team. So
Mhm.
when you sign up, if you're just like, the only artist on a project, you'll be the only person on that team, but you can add all your collaborators. So for artists who do have a big team, they are going to have 5 people from their label on their Spotify for Artists team, 3 people from their management team, maybe a promoter, maybe their bandmates. So they're all in there together. And so, yeah, the more people you have helping you out, the more on top of every little detail on Spotify you might be. And so we try to simplify it. So if you have one person on a team, or some people like 20, 30, 40 people on their Spotify for Artists team, the tools are the same, and we kind of help people coordinate and collaborate.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. I guess one other funny like myth I've heard is I'm trying to remember it completely. I think one of them was like there was like this music business guru, right? And he was like, oh, Spotify looks at other third-party metrics on just like how to trigger Discover Weekly, Release Radar. And I think one of them was mentioned was like Shazams, like, hey, people are putting their phone up, they're listening to your song at a bar and they Shazam it. That is another factor that they're looking into. Exercise apps, and Peloton is really, really big for pushing music, because I think they pay like a really high royalty, and they're always featuring artists because workouts, you want EDM, you want upbeat music, right? There was this other running app, I think, that has like a built-in music player that they're like, oh, Spotify's also pulling from that because it shows like, oh, runners are really into 125 BPM house music, so it's like, okay, I don't really know if that's totally true, but would love to know, just like, do third-party platforms have a little bit of the influence on like where Spotify's pulling data? Like, oh, like, do we see a big, I think Melon is the one in Korea where that's what they use for streaming mainly over there. Like, are they looking at Melon stats? Like, okay, like if there's a big following of Melon, is that going to push to some, audience on Spotify?
Yeah, for the most part, no, is the answer. Our editors are like true cultural experts. So they're looking at everything more in like a cultural context. So like, we have a really popular playlist called Viral Hits, and those will often be songs that have just blown up on different social video apps. Or if a editor happens to notice that a song's performing really well on user-generated running playlists, they might add it to our official running playlist. So they're certainly paying attention to what's happening off Spotify to fill that cultural context for playlists, but in any direct way, no, we're not looking at data like that. What happens more often is something that happens off Spotify is quickly reflected in Spotify data through increased demand. So like, right, there's like a big sync in an ad or a TV show, or you get featured in a Peloton class, or some sort of social meme goes viral with your song. It's not that we're getting direct data from those integrations. It's that Spotify is where listeners go when they want to go listen to it. So they'll hear it in one of those places. We'll see a spike of all this like, inbound active interest in the song. Or we'll see a bunch of users playlisting it, and the playlist names all are really similar, like that sort of thing. And so, yeah, anything that happens off Spotify is where people actually like go to listen and discover the artist around it. So usually it's more that the editors will be noticing.
Okay, so more of like the internal like search engine, like, oh, there's a bunch of people searching for this song, or they're, I guess, more interaction with the platform directly they're paying attention to, because you'll see this spike, you'll see like a big notice. That makes more sense.
Right, and then that's when the algorithms pick it up, because the top thing our algorithm cares about is songs that listeners are really connected to. So if suddenly a bunch of listeners are actively streaming it, searching for it, adding it to their playlists, sharing it with their friends, that's what's going to trigger the algorithmic signal. It's not that the algorithm's noticing what's happening off the platform.
Gotcha. Cool. Let me see. Cool. We kind of answered these other ones. I think we just have 2 more questions, so hopefully we still have time. But
All right.
As someone, you've worked in marketing for a pretty long time. Pepsi, Medium. I forgot what the other one was, and Twitter. what are some other mediums, I guess, that artists should pay attention to? I know there's Spotify, the end all be all that people should really be trying to grow a fan base with, but are there any kind of smaller platforms that you think people should be paying attention to, whether that's like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly like all the social apps are good to be on, and certainly like it's a great way for fans to find new artists they love there, and especially artists they already love on Spotify. They'll go follow on social, and there's really great connection tools there. Yeah, I've been paying a lot of attention to some of the kind of community-oriented platforms, Discords or subreddits, or there's a lot of like specialized fan club type apps that are really interesting. And for the right type of artist, I've seen that used really well, where you're doing all these marketing efforts to get kind of new reach on social, success on streaming platforms, building that fan base, and then you want that final destination where your biggest fans can kind of opt in and say like, I want to know everything going on with you, and really build that personal connection. So yeah, that's like, for an artist who has a fan base that's starting to have that kind of like cult passion, a lot of those community apps are doing really interesting things. Some of them are like SMS based, so like you can get people to sign up for your text list. Old-fashioned email is kind of a community app. If you get people to sign up for your, Substack or Ghost or newsletter platform of choice, Mailchimp, it's all about trying to really capture that fan base so you can reach them with everything that you're up to. So yeah, I'd say like that'd be one place to look. I've seen a lot of artists use that in really cool ways.
Gotcha. So maybe using the other platforms in like a more niche, exclusive kind of fan club way of like, oh, like if you want to know more about me, you can join my Discord, you can join my subreddit. More insight, I guess, for the fans that way. Yeah, I know a lot of artists, like it's hard because I feel like every year there's a new social media platform like, oh, you got to join, whatever it is, to just make sure that you're capturing market share and you're getting people to know that you exist. Do you think it makes sense for artists to just specialize in one or two, where it's like, all right, I'm going to post on TikTok and Instagram. That's it. I'm not going to be spending all my time on these other apps because as an artist, the one thing they want to be doing every day is making music, and they don't really want to be focusing too much on the marketing, right? So do you think that that's a better strategy for them, really niche down, pick like 3 or 4 platforms instead of the like 10 or 15 that are there?
Yeah, I think that probably does make sense. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to age myself too much, but that's where like I'm talking about email again. Like email and SMS sign up is really undervalued because right, that's like email's not going away, text isn't going away. It doesn't kind of come with trying to master a new social platform. You kind of know that's going to be a reliable medium over time. Yeah, I think artists who like have limited time or no team or small teams around them, instead of spreading yourself thin across all 10 social apps, find the 3 or 4 that fit kind of your vibe more. Some artists are really good at talking to camera. Some are really good at like performing or dancing or singing. Some are going to be kind of more in the background. And I've seen some artists write like amazing newsletters where that kind of fits how they want to promote more. Or really visual artists might want to go to more visual platforms. Ones who are really conversational do well on X and Threads. So I think, yeah, kind of writing out what your strengths are in a promotional capacity as an artist is a good place to start. And then think of, okay, of all those social platforms, which are the handful that speak to my strengths best, and focus your time there. I think is probably a pretty smart move.
Gotcha. That makes more sense though, because it's like I know some artists are like, hey, I hate filming myself, I hate making TikToks, I hate whatever, some for the marketing aspect where it's still necessary. Like everyone has to do some sort of marketing because it's the music business, right? You have to be engaging in some capacity in the business. So that definitely makes sense though, where it's like, hey, like play to your strengths, don't be doing things you don't really want to do, because speaking fully long term, it's easier to do something you can tolerate and enjoy rather than doing something you hate every second of.
And I think fans can tell. Like artists are great performers, so sometimes they can fake it, but when you see an artist who like is uncomfortable on camera, doesn't want to be filming it, I think fans can tell. Versus when there's like an artist who loves it or an artist who I sign up for Maggie Rogers's email newsletter, and she writes these kind of like amazing multi-paragraph, really thoughtful updates from Tor about her new projects, and I think that suits her really well. I think there's like lots of ways to play to your strengths for artists who don't want to do the kind of on-camera social thing.
Exactly. Cool. Well, this is you don't have to answer this question, but what do you guys plan on adding in 2025 for Spotify for Artists? Are there any cool, crazy, game-changing things coming up? Would love to know. You can just hint to if you don't want to say it.
I can't talk about everything, okay. But one I can that's I think really exciting is music videos are coming to our platform in a big way. We have just rolled out, just this week, we rolled out official music videos in another like 80 plus markets. So I think we're at like 97, 98 markets, not currently in the US or Canada yet, but almost 100 markets around the world where we have a beginning catalog of official music videos. And we're going to keep kind of expanding that. So make sure we can get all artists' music videos on there, and all different types of music videos. And then we're bringing some of those music video features into Spotify for Artists. So there's a video and visuals tab in Spotify for Artists where right now it's pretty rudimentary. You can just see your music videos that have been delivered through by content providers. So you can kind of just like see them all and make sure the titles look right. But we're going to be building, a lot of the features you see for managing your music. We'll have some features in Spotify for Artists that give you, analytics and kind of more features and ways to promote music videos coming soon next year. So that's one I'm really excited about because music videos coming to Spotify feels like a long time coming.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Well, I think I'm just going to review. I think that's pretty much everything. We covered a lot of the questions, I think, earlier on. That kind of crossed over, which is good. Yeah, I think that's when does Spotify Wrapped come out this year? I know it's like towards the end of the holiday season, but when is it?
Yeah. I can't reveal that date.
Oh, you can't? Oh, it's fine. It's all good. It's all good. No worries.
We like that surprise and delight moment for fans when Wrapped turns on. We did just launch the kind of pre-Wrapped campaign we do every year. So we launched a kind of checklist where it tells artists everything to do before Wrapped, so that they can get the most out of the kind of fan moment of Wrapped at the end of the year. So the big one this year is artists have until November 15th to pre-schedule a Wrapped video clip. So we have some prompts in Spotify for Artists, tell fans about the song you love performing most this year, your favorite song you released this year, your favorite music memory from this year. You can pre-schedule it in Spotify for Artists before November 15th in the upload flow. You kind of mark off that it's for Wrapped. And then when your top fans are doing the Wrapped experience, we're going to present those videos to them. So that's a really fun one. And the upload opened this week and until November 15th for artists to get their videos pre-scheduled in there.
Sweet. Yeah, I think I remember that from last year. I think I was added to like one or two. It was really cool. Yeah, you get like kind of like a exclusive talk with them, which is really interesting and a great way to just connect better with that artist. So
exactly.
Cool. Well, thank you so much again. This was a great conversation. Learned a lot about Spotify for Artists I didn't know before. So thank you so much again for your time.
Awesome. Sure thing. Great to meet you, Michael.
Yeah, you too.